And now, kindergartners, we will hear the final part of our chapter, Daily Bread, from Margaret Gatty's Parables from Nature. What will happen? Our robin redbreast had just seen the last of the berries from his holly bush enter into the home of the humans. They had cut them for decorations at Christmas time. Let's read on. "I have eaten, let me be thankful," was the robin's resolute remark as he flew away from the house and returned to the holly tree, which had so lately been his storehouse of hope, and from its now stripped and barren branches poured out, as before, his lay of glad thanksgiving for what he had had. Not a breath of wind was blowing, not a leaf stirred. Not a movement of any kind took place, save when some overloaded branch dropped part of its weight of snow on the ground below, as the sweet carol of the still hungry little bird rose through the air on that dark, still winter's afternoon. What did it tell of? Oh, surely, that clear bell-like melody, that musical tone, that exquisite harmonious trill, told of something. Of something, I mean, besides the tale of a poor little desolate bird, whose food had been snatched away before his eyes, and who might be thought to have eaten his last meal. Surely those solitary notes of joy, poured into the midst of a gloom so profound, were as an angel's message, coming with a promise of peace and hope, at a moment when both seemed dead and departed. Homeward from his day's work of business, there passed by at that moment the owner and inhabitant of the little suburban villa. It had been a melancholy day to him, for it was saddened by painful recollections. For it was the anniversary of the day on which his wife had been laid in her churchyard grave, and since that event 2 sons had sailed for the far-off land of promise, which puts a hemisphere between the loved and loving on earth. So that far distant land held them, whilst one, not so distant, perhaps, but more unattainable for the present, held the other. No wonder, therefore, that on that owner's face, as he approached his home, there hung a cloud of suffering and care, which not even the thought of the Christmas day at hand, and the children yet spared to his hearth, could prevent or dispel. Verily, the autumn of man's life comes down upon him as the autumn season descends upon the earth, clouds and tears mixed with whatever brightness may remain. All at once, however, the abstracted look of sorrow is startled. What is that he hears? He is passing outside the little plantation, which skirts the grounds. He is close to the little gate near which the holly tree grows. He pauses. He stops. He lifts up those troubled eyes. Surely a wholesome tear is stealing over the cheek, beautiful, tender, affecting, as the voice of the cuckoo in spring. There swept over the listener's heart the autumnal song of the robin. Sing on from the top of your desolate tree, O little bird of cheerfulness and hope! Pour out again that heaven-taught music of contentment with the hour that now is. Shall you be confident of protection, and man destitute of hope? Shall you, in the depth of your winter's trial, have joy and peace, and man never look beyond the cloud? Poor little innocent bird! he sang his pretty song to an end, and then he flew away. Quarrel not with him, if in painful recollection of the holly berries that had been carried off into the house, he hovered round its windows and doors with anxious and curious stealth. Whether across the middle of one window he observed a tempting red cluster hanging down inside, no one can say. But the tantalizing pain of such a sight, if he felt it, was soon over, for just then the window was opened, and along its outside ledge something was strewn by a careful hand. The window was closed again immediately, and whoever it was within retreated backwards into the room. From a standard rosebush where he had flown when the window was opened, our little friend watched the affair. Presently, a fragrant odor seemed to steal towards him, something unknown yet pleasant, something tempting and very nice. Was there any risk to be feared? All seemed quiet and still. Should he venture? Ah, that odor again! It was irresistible! In another minute he was on the ledge, and boldly, as if a dozen invitations had bidden him welcome to the feast, he was devouring crumb after crumb of the scattered bread. A burst of delighted laughter from within broke upon his Elysium of joy for a moment, and sent him back with sudden flight to the rosebush. But no disaster ensued, and he was tempted again and again. The children within the house might well laugh at the saucy bird, whom their father had by his gift of breadcrumbs tempted to the place. They laughed at the bold hop, the eager pecking, the brilliant bead-like eye of their new guest, and at the bright red of his breast. But it was a laugh that told of nothing but kind delight. Little bits of things do accidentally turn up always indeed, said the robin to himself, as he crept into his ivy hole that evening to sleep. And he dreamt half the night of the wonderful place and the princely fare. And next morning, long before anybody was awake and up, he was off to the magical window ledge again. But neither children nor breadcrumbs were there. How was he to know about breakfast hours and the customs of social life? So it almost seemed to him as if his evening meal had been a dream. Too good a thing to be true, or if it had ever been true, too good to return. Yet a sweeter song was never heard on a summer eve than that with which the robin greeted that early day, the Christmas morning of the year. Perched in the laurel bush near the tortoise's retreat, he told his sleeping friend a long, marvelous tale of his yesterday's adventures, and promised him more news against the time when he should return to wake him up in the spring. Nor did he promise in vain, for whether the tortoise would be patient enough to listen or not, there was no doubt the robin had plenty to tell. He had to tell of the daily meal that was spread for him by those suddenly raised up friends, that daily meal that had never failed, of the curious tiny house that was erected for him at the end of the ledge, which, carpeted as it was with cotton wool and hay, formed almost too warm a roosting place for his hardy little frame. But even to the tortoise he could never tell all he had felt during that wonderful winter, for he could never explain to anyone the mysterious friendship which grew up between himself and his protectors. He could never describe properly the friendly faces that sat round the breakfast table on which at last he was allowed to hop about at will. He did tell, however, how he used to sing on the rose tree outside every morning of every day to welcome the waking of his friends, and how, in the late afternoons, the father would sometimes open the window and sit there alone by himself, listening to his song. "Come, come, my little friend," remarked the Tortoise, when he did awake at last, and had come out of his cavern bed and heard the account. "I have been asleep for a long time, and I dare say have been dreaming all manner of fine things myself, if I could but think of them. Now I suspect you have had a nap as well. However, I am very glad to see you alive and not so half-starved looking as I expected. But as to your having sung every day, and had plenty to eat every day, and been so happy all the time, take my advice. Don't try to cram older heads than your own with travelers' tales." That is the end of our Daily Bread chapter from Parables from Nature by Margaret Gatty. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you believed the robin's tale more than the tortoise did. Goodbye for now.